Caitlin Clark does not need much space here.
This kid, Angel Reese, has something about her.
Her personality, contagious.
She makes, in her.
They say if you want to be the best, you have to prove it against those who once ruled the court. In women's basketball, few players embody that mindset more than Caitlin Clark. She's only in her early 20s, but fans and analysts alike are already whispering her name among the all-time greats. Yet, with that level of hype comes a target on your back. If there's one thing Caitlin Clark refuses to do, it's back down from a challenge, no matter who stands in front of her. Whether she's shattering scoring records, silencing critics, or igniting online debates, she plays the game with an electric swagger rarely seen before. And when you dive into how she's embarrassed some of the biggest names in women's basketball, you'll see precisely why everyone's talking about her. Caitlin's story didn't begin under a spotlight. As a kid, she was simply obsessed with basketball. Always the first in the gym, launching shots from distances that made coaches shake their heads in disbelief. Local fans started to notice when she regularly dropped 30 or 40 points against far older competition. But to Caitlin, it was just part of the process. She played every game like her life depended on it, pouring her heart into each possession. Still, few realized how rapidly she'd transformed the landscape of women's basketball. From the moment she stepped onto the college scene, Caitlin Clark began turning heads. She didn't just lead her team, she made it feel like the entire program revolved around her dynamic style. Every game brought a new reason to sit up straight and pay attention. One week, she'd sink a game winner from near half court. The next, she'd post a 30-point triple-double that felt almost routine to her. It wasn't simply the gaudy stats, it was how she scored them. She launched threes with the confidence of someone who believes the ball is going in before it even leaves her fingertips. She threaded passes through double teams, setting up teammates in ways that made fans question physics. By her sophomore year, whispers of "is she the best scorer we've seen in the college game?" turned into national debate. She kept scaling the record books with ease, breaking the NCAA women's scoring record, passing icons who once seemed untouchable. Of course, the wave of hype carried into the WNBA, where a fresh challenge awaited. Standing in her path were living legends and rising stars determined to slow her down, but humiliating big names is almost a pastime for Caitlin Clark. Just look at what happened when she faced off with Sabrina Ionescu. Before Clark, Ionescu was the name on everyone's lips in women's college basketball. She'd become the first NCAA player, man or woman, to hit an unreal milestone of 2,000 points, 1,000 rebounds, and 1,000 assists. Yet when Clark laced up against her in a regular season showdown, something remarkable happened. Clark recorded a triple-double so casually that you'd think she'd been doing it every game for a decade. Her Indiana Fever marched to victory over Ionescu's New York Liberty, and it was clear the baton had officially been passed. Sabrina, for all her skill, had just been overshadowed by a rookie determined to leave her mark. Then there's Diana Taurasi, often revered as the greatest of all time in the WNBA. She's the epitome of longevity and skill, owning more scoring records than nearly anyone. But on one scorching evening, Taurasi found herself on the receiving end of Clark's unstoppable offense. Early in the matchup, Taurasi flashed her veteran prowess, hitting shots that reminded everyone why she's a future Hall of Famer. Gradually, though, the momentum shifted, and by the game's conclusion, Caitlin had stolen the show. The so-called GOAT looked a step behind defensively, and fans couldn't help but comment on how a new wave of superstars led by Clark might be claiming that throne a lot sooner than expected. The chatter reached a fever pitch on social media, with some seeing it as disrespectful to the legend, and others arguing that it's simply the circle of sports life. Yet not every showdown ends with Clark on top of the world. Against certain opponents, she's had nights that remind everyone even superstars can falter. Mackenzie Holmes showed what it takes to frustrate the unstoppable. In a tension-filled college matchup, Holmes spearheaded her team to an 86-69 victory over Clark's squad. For once, Clark looked mortal, missing shots she typically drains in her sleep. Critics were quick to call it a fluke off night. Supporters pointed out that she still nearly had a triple-double. The bigger story was how the crowd and media seemed to focus on her every single move. Even when Caitlin loses, she can't escape the spotlight, proving once again how massive her influence has become. Diamond Miller was another rival who refused to be overshadowed. There were nights Clark lit up the scoreboard with 40-plus points, only to find Miller across from her responding with near-matching firepower. During a Big Ten tournament clash, however, Clark unleashed a spectacular 42-point performance, seizing victory and sending a message that on the biggest stages, she thrives under pressure. Miller's 27 points looked impressive, until you compared them to Clark's unstoppable barrage that threatened to break tournament records. The contrast in stat lines ignited more talk about Clark's uncanny ability to elevate her game exactly when it matters most. Georgia Amore knows that phenomenon too well. In a neck-and-neck battle, Clark poured in 44 points, overshadowing Amore's own spectacular 30. It's almost unfair how quickly Caitlin can flip the momentum of a game. One moment you think you have her contained, and the next she's dropping back-to-back threes from a range other players wouldn't dream of. You can sense the desperation in opponents as they try to rotate extra defenders, only to watch her drop a pinpoint assist or draw an and one. The frustration for defenders is real. Coaches scramble for solutions, but so far, none have truly solved the puzzle that is Caitlin Clark. As her name spread across headlines, so did the controversies. Angel Reese emerged as a central figure in one of Clark's most heated rivalries. Fans love to speculate about bad blood between them after a college championship game that ended with subtle gestures and a flurry of online discussion. Some say Clark was the instigator, others blame Reese for fueling unnecessary drama. Regardless, every time the two share the court, social media goes crazy with highlights, trash talk, and impassioned opinions. The rumor mill churns with stories about them exchanging words or refusing to shake hands. Some confirmed, others pure speculation. Yet, to the outside observer, this friction only adds to the mystique. Love them or hate them, you'll tune in because you can't wait to see what sparks will fly next. Behind the scenes, there are whispers that Clark's presence can sometimes overshadow her own teammates. Some fans wonder if it's frustrating for fellow players to constantly be asked about her accomplishments rather than their own. It's not malicious on Caitlin's part. She appears genuinely focused on team success. Yet the phenomenon persists because her talent is so undeniable. Endorsement deals and NIL contracts come knocking on her door at a pace no one's seen in women's basketball, fueling chatter that she might become the highest-paid face of the sport. Detractors claim it's too much too soon, that she's overshadowing more established veterans who've been toiling for years without that kind of spotlight. But for better or worse, that's the Caitlin Clark effect. She draws attention, money, and star power wherever she goes. If any game truly captured the Clark effect, it was her showdown with Kelsey Plum, a legend in her own right who once held the all-time scoring title in NCAA Division I women's hoops. When Clark dethroned Plum by surpassing her record with a signature deep three against Michigan, a generational baton seemed to pass on. Later in a WNBA face-off, Plum struck back by dropping a scorching 34 points against Clark, reminding everyone that the league's superstars won't bow down easily. Clark, with her 13 points and 11 assists, couldn't swing the momentum this time. But even on an off-shooting night, she found ways to make her presence felt. After the buzzer, the two shared a moment that reminded fans that mutual respect exists in the midst of fierce competition. Off the court, Clark seems mostly unbothered by the chaos swirling around her name. She speaks in interviews with a calm assurance, crediting teammates, coaches, and the fans for fueling her success. Yet, you can't ignore the slight grin she flashes when asked about certain rivalries or controversies. She knows that drama keeps eyes glued to the screen, and in the modern sports era, attention is currency. On social media, she'll occasionally respond to critics with a playful jab, never crossing the line into outright disrespect but leaving just enough to stoke the flames. Some call it arrogance. Others see it as the confidence a star of her caliber needs to thrive. And that, ultimately, is the puzzle at the core of Caitlin Clark's story. She's a once-in-a-generation offensive maestro who sometimes ruffles feathers, whether intentionally or not. She's breathing new life into women's basketball, filling arenas and sparking debates that reach beyond the usual fan base. Everywhere she goes, she faces critics convinced she's overhyped, while fans argue she's setting a standard that future players will chase for decades. So is she already an all-time WNBA great in the making? Or is this buzz simply the product of our highlight-driven era? The truth might lie somewhere in the middle. But if there's one thing we do know, it's that Caitlin Clark isn't going anywhere. She'll keep shooting from impossibly long distances and humiliating her idols on the very stage they once owned. She'll keep fueling speculation about what controversy or showdown lies around the corner. And she'll keep leaving fans in awe, or in outrage, every time she steps onto the court. In the end, that magnetic blend of brilliance, swagger, and mystery is what makes her so captivating. Whether you view her as a hero, villain, or a bit of both, you can't deny she's forcing the world to pay attention to women's basketball in ways we've rarely seen. And perhaps that's the best legacy any player can hope for, to shift the conversation, spark passion, and raise the bar for everyone around them. Caitlin Clark is living that legacy right now, rewriting the rules of the game with every shot she takes. And you won't want to miss what she does next.